building a company culture that motivates and encourages everybody on the team to have a personal growth plan for themselves.
What does culture from the heart mean to you?
The culture you create in your company is an expression of your own values and your personal beliefs. And those are things you can't hide.
When you're willing to do that, things start to progress in a different fashion. It's having those healthy, assertive, adult conversations. And I think there's some good things that foster from this.
The main thing is, like I said earlier, be authentic in what you do believe.
What advice would you give to other leaders that are listening in going, wow, that sounds like a really great idea to implement at our company?
Sitting down, having a cup of coffee, and just learning about people and figuring out how can I best help you is the way you start by building a culture of trust and of personal development.
Leaders lead first, and you got to show all of this by leading by example. And people pick up on this.
What is your plan? What's your written down plan for becoming better?
Welcome to the Culture from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. In a business world where employees and customers crave authenticity and trust, hosts Larry Levine and Darrell are on a mission to find and showcase heart-centered executives and the companies they lead. You are about to hear an inspiring conversation with a visionary leader that's bringing heart into the workplace, empowering employees, serving their clients, and uplifting communities, all to create true success. This is Culture from the Heart. The movement starts here. Let's begin.
Welcome to Culture from the Heart. I'm your co-host, Darrell, here today with Larry Levine, and we're joined in the studio by John Marvin, President and CEO of Texas State Optical Network of Independent Optometrists right there in Houston, Texas. John, it's great to have you in here today.
Thank you, Darrell. I appreciate the invitation. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, as have we. Thanks for investing in us, John.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. As we get started, John, you know the question that every guest on the Culture from the Heart podcast answers, and that is, what does culture from the heart mean to you?
Well, I think that I would have to say that it's sincerity and authenticity, meaning it's an expression. The culture you create in your company is an expression of your own values and your personal beliefs. And those are things you can't hide. And because they're so prevalent, they create the environment with which others that work with you kind of operate in, or the culture of the company is a part of an extension of the leader's belief in it, especially in a company our size, which is relatively small we're not a big, massive Fortune 500 corporation. We're a small company. And so it very much is an extension of my beliefs and my values. And we instill those in the company values that we have too.
Mm-hmm. Hey, John, thanks for sharing. I'm just curious, where'd you learn all this from when it comes to culture development and values and so forth? Walk us through the story that John learned as it relates to developing cultures.
Well, I think I learned a lot of what I believe about cultures from working for people and operating and living in the culture other people have created. And I learned in that process how they built those cultures, the type of environment I didn't want to work in. I didn't enjoy working, had that dreaded Sunday night before Monday morning where you just don't want to get up the next morning and go. And I thought to myself, if I ever have an opportunity to be responsible for creating an environment for people to work in, I wanted to do something totally different. I wanted people to not dread Sunday night, but get excited starting Sunday evening and afternoon about what lay ahead for us all the next week. And so I learned a lot about what I didn't want, and it kind of worked in the opposite effort to create an atmosphere that was welcoming, that was not judgmental, that believes in people. And there's so much that goes into all of that, and the way that you protect that. You build it and then you have to protect it. But the main thing is, like I said earlier, be authentic in what you do believe, and just be honest with people. Because I think that if you allow yourself to be just a little bit vulnerable with the people on your team, they respect that.
Yeah, and I think that is such a powerful insight about being vulnerable with people on your team. I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think that type of vulnerability unlocks inside the culture?
Trust. I think that's the biggest thing. It unlocks trust. Doesn't mean you're not still responsible for the team. You can't. It doesn't mean you're soft. I've been criticized by others that I don't take a hard enough management position and tact. And I said, well, I'm not working with children. I'm working with other adults that deserve to be respected. And if they're not capable of doing the job, the solution is not treating them poorly or treating them like children. The solution is to find different people and put them on the team and do us both a favor. I've done that a couple of times where I went into somebody and said, listen, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to suggest that you don't have a place on this team. I didn't suggest it. I just told them they didn't. But I looked at it as I was trying to do a favor for them. Because nothing is worse than being in a position that you're not performing well in and not people's expectations of the basic job responsibilities. And you know it. I mean, you know it. There's a sense to it. And so that's part of what makes that Sunday night so miserable. And so it's better to deal with it early. No one sit around in denial. Do it with compassion and go in and say, listen, let me help you. If you'll resign, I'll help you get another job. It really is that type of an approach to people. And I think just having a respect. So vulnerability and letting people kind of understand that you're willing to put yourself in that kind of a position creates trust. And that kind of mutual trust fosters a cohesiveness in the company, even when you have to terminate somebody from a performance standpoint.
Hey, Darrell, you know what I like about this, and I'm reading between the lines on this, and this is what's just dancing through my head, John, is what this all breeds is healthy conversations, and it's okay. And I call these healthy adult conversations. And it's going to require some vulnerability. When you're willing to do that, things start to progress in a different fashion. It's having those healthy, assertive, you even used it, adult conversations. And I think cultures that breed this, there's some good things that foster from this.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that I've learned is that other people are always watching. And the other people on the team are always watching how I handle difficult situations. And the maturity and the compassion that I bring to difficult challenges underlies that trust, because they know that I'm not going to be erratic. I'm not going to be emotional. They know I have passion, and that's a part of emotion, but I'm not going to react to things emotionally and foster fear. Somebody has to reassure everybody that we're going to get through this. We're going to work these out. And so it does have, one of the things that I remember hearing is, and I grew up during the Ronald Reagan presidency. And one of the speechwriters would mention the fact that when that helicopter landed outside the White House, someone would say, "Daddy's home." And it was a sense that Ronald Reagan was able to create in his team that it's going to be okay. We're all going to get through this together. And I think that is a really important element. And how I handle difficult situations, whether it be terminating an employee or marketplace challenges, reassures and creates an environment or culture of confidence and trust.
Wonderful. Well, you're listening to Culture from the Heart. We're going to rejoin John D. Marvin on this great conversation about culture right after a word from our sponsors. At Culture from the Heart, we believe that great leaders put their people first, leading with empathy and purpose. That's why we're thrilled to partner with Learn It, a global leader in learning for over 30 years, to bring you an exclusive offer: 45 days of free, unlimited training for your team with a minimum of 5 participants.
This isn't just about skills. It's about creating a culture where your people feel valued, supported, and empowered to grow. Did you know that 94% of employees are more likely to stay at companies that invest in their development? Culture from the heart means giving your team the tools they need to thrive, not just for today, but for the future.
Learn It's courses help your team master essential skills like communication, collaboration, and emotional intelligence, all foundations of a people-first workplace. It's about fostering resilience, connection, and growth.
Don't wait. Visit learnit.com/culture to claim your 45 days of free training and start building a workplace where your people and your business can thrive.
That's learnit.com/culture. Start enhancing your learning culture today. Thanks for supporting our sponsors. We're having a great conversation with John Marvin, CEO of Texas State Optical. And John, when you think of the culture at TSO and what you're developing there, what words would you use to describe the culture in your organization?
Well, some of them are cliche. Some of them are like teamwork. Some of them, though, are, I think, really descriptive of something that's important to me, and that is personal growth. I work at building a company culture that motivates and encourages everybody on the team to have a personal growth plan for themselves. To look at what they do with Texas State Optical, not as an end in itself, but as a means of creating an opportunity to grow professionally, but also personally. And a part of an annual performance review everyone goes through includes an update on their own personal growth plans as they were discussed the previous year, and then what the year ahead has for them. And I mean everything from we live in South Texas, so being bilingual is a big advantage when you're doing business. Mm-hmm. And so I had a couple of people that said they wanted to put in their own personal growth. They wanted to learn Spanish. And so that became a part of their job. It has nothing to do, it's not required to be in their job, but they wanted to do it because they believed it would make them more valuable, not only to Texas State Optical, but also to their own career, that it would build value in them personally, and so it would help in their career. And so we encourage that. We require that everybody sits down and writes a written personal growth plan, which most people never do. And, sometimes it's difficult. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, umpteen pages with all sorts of formatting. It just be a statement that says this next year, I want to get better at something. And so that has become a really important part of the culture that we have, because it represents an investment that I and the company is willing to make in them individually. Mm-hmm. And I believe that if they're going to become, one of my jobs is to help them become more valuable to the company every year. And if they're going to become more valuable to the company, I also look at it as, how do we build skills and value in you personally? Therefore, we get more value. But also, I realize not everybody's going to work for Texas State Optical the rest of their lives. Some of them are in their 30s and are the beginning of a career. And I want them to look back on their time here as being a very formative time where we believed in them and they were willing to commit and invest a lot in the company itself. So those are things that I work at to characterize and create a culture of growth and development internally.
I really like this personal growth plan mantra, and something tells me that John learned this somewhere down the road in John's career and brought that into your organization. Walk us through where you learned this all from. By the way, I think this is great stuff. I think every company should have a personal and a professional growth plan, but walk us through where you learned this from.
I have probably starting in my early 40s, I began to kind of take my career seriously. Up until that point, it was pretty much where can I get a paycheck? And I wanted to work someplace that I could work with my head more than my hands, but I really wasn't putting a whole lot of focus on my career. In my early 40s, I began to take it more seriously. And I picked up a book that started me in a direction. And the book I had been given I went through a Dale Carnegie sales course, like early on. I was in my late 20s. My first sales job. Really didn't have a whole lot of sales experience. So the company I was working with invested in me and paid for me to go to the Dale Carnegie sales course. And I loved it. I just loved it. And one of the books was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so when I started taking my career seriously, I thought I need to do something here to kind of, that'd be a good skill to have, how to win friends, how to influence people. And so I started reading, and that led to understanding the value of my own personal growth through reading and development, which ultimately led to being introduced to John C. Maxwell. And John Maxwell is a known author on leadership. And one of his books is about personal growth and personal development. And I read that. And for the first time, the question was, he tells the story in the book that the reason he became involved was someone set him down and said, tell me what your personal growth plan is. And he didn't know what to say. And he began to say, like a lot of us might, we'd start, my goals are this, and I'm going to achieve this. And I wanted to, he said, no, what is your plan? What's your written down plan for becoming better? And so in that book, he talks about that value. And that's when I really took it to heart. And that was probably 25 years ago, maybe. Something in that neighborhood. But that book, along with a whole library that I've developed, is in terms of people. And I take them on as mentors. So I look at John Maxwell as a mentor of mine. And I never met him personally, but I feel like I know of him certainly through his writing and his books. And I've never met the Apostle Paul either, but I feel like I know him and certainly can learn from him as well, right? So John Maxwell, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, these are all people that I really have embraced. And the scripture, very important to me. I believe a lot of my philosophy and beliefs are centered in Christ-centered learning and understanding. And so those are the things that I started just kind of putting together my own view of the world through that. And I work on it now on a daily basis. It's become a part of a daily routine for me that I've followed very structured for at least 20 years.
I love it. Well, everybody hang tight. Absolutely. I absolutely love it, John. Well, all of our listeners, hang tight. And when we're back, we're going to continue this conversation with John Marvin about a culture of personal development. At Culture from the Heart, we know that hiring the right salespeople and leaders for your company is about more than just resumes. It's about finding individuals who have what it takes to succeed. That's why we're excited to offer candidate assessments from Selling from the Heart to help ensure you make great hiring decisions for your sales team.
Based on data from surveys of over 2.2 million sales professionals and sales leaders, These assessments benchmark your candidates against the core skills of top-performing salespeople and leaders. You'll gain unparalleled insight into their potential, uncovering whether they have the mindset, abilities, and behaviors needed to thrive in your organization.
It's not just about filling a role. It's about ensuring that every sales hire aligns with your culture and contributes to your success. Don't leave your next hire to chance.
Visit sellingfromtheheart.net/hiring and discover how candidate assessments can help you build a winning team. Make your next hire with confidence because your business deserves the best.
And we're back. Thank you for sticking with us. Let's dive right back into this conversation with John Marvin about developing a culture of personal growth. So, John, I absolutely love this concept of personal growth plans for yourself as a leader and for your employees. I'm curious, what advice would you give to other leaders that are listening in going, wow, that sounds like a really great idea to implement at our company?
I think, and I've thought about that because others have asked me that same question. And I think it all starts with a cup of coffee and sitting down with someone that works with you and having a really sincere curiosity about how I can be most helpful to you. I mean, when I think about it, we've got some really great people that work for us. And every day they leave their families and they devote at least 8 hours a day to the company and the things that I'm responsible for. And I am so appreciative of that because they don't have to. I mean, they could devote those 8 hours a lot of different ways other than with me. And so I feel it's real important for me to invest in them. And what I mean by that is listening to them, talking to them. Mm-hmm. And so I make a point. I've got meetings throughout a week, like a lot of people do. And when it's meetings with my kind of core leadership team, I will start those meetings with an intentional effort to just tell me about you, what's going on with you. And so we'll take 10 minutes for me to shut up, just to ask them and let them talk to me. And, the first several times that you do that, they won't be open, but once they believe that you really do want to know, that you are sincere, then they will begin to open up and tell you. And that creates, again, it's a little bit of vulnerability. That creates a dialogue between two of you that can really serve the company well, because there are going to get times, just like in a marriage, there are times that while you both, I'm going to probably ought to stay away from that analogy in a business environment. But suffice it to say, there are going to be times when you don't get along or you see things differently, and there's going to be a conflict. And if you've got a foundation that you both really understand each other from a intention standpoint and what they're really at the heart of things, it'll help you get through that. I just had an experience like this about 10 days ago with someone that I rely on very much. And we started a meeting, and I just started by saying, listen, I got to tell you just up front, I'm perceiving that something's not right here. And you just seem to be a little distracted, a little withdrawn. And I just need to kind of clear that air so that if I'm wrong, great. But if I'm right, then let's talk about it. Let's figure out what it is that's causing you to feel that way. And fortunately, she went out of her way to assure me that I was wrong, that she had some personal things that were going on that had caused her to be a little more distracted than what she might have otherwise been. And once I kind of just quietly listened and let her explain, then things kind of got back. We overcame that time, but it had to be dealt with. And if not, that's going to continue to bother me. And as it developed and as it started bothering me on a more regular basis, it was going to be apparent to her. And then that whole dynamic between the two of us. So I think that sitting down, having a cup of coffee, and just learning about people and figuring out how can I best help you is the way you start, by building a culture of trust and of personal, I would call it personal development, because you're developing each other personally as well as professionally. But that sounds so simple to do, but it's not, because you've got to really, certainly for me, you've got to learn how to ask a question and shut up and just let people talk, and let them and give them the time to build that trust. Like I said, the first few times you approach that, they don't believe you. And they believe you're wanting them to be vulnerable, but you're not yet proven that you're willing to be. And I think that you've got to demonstrate that vulnerability through consistency of sincerity. That a lot of big words, but being consistent by showing that you really do care.
It goes back to leaders lead first, and you got to show all of this by leading by example, and people pick up on this. I'm a massive believer, John, that as leaders lead and they become vulnerable and they share a little bit about themselves, in turn, they get their people to start opening up, and the gates just start to open up a little bit more and a little bit more. And it takes consistency and it takes discipline. I applaud you for what you're doing. I'm a massive believer of these personal growth plans. You probably got success stories upon success stories throughout the years of how this has played out inside Texas State Optical. I'm sure you do.
I've got a guy who works for me. He's probably 60. 58, maybe late 50s, but I think he's in his early 60s. And he's been in the industry for years and years and years. And I introduced him about 15 years ago to John Maxwell. And I bought him a book. I said, I think you'd really like this book. I think it'll help you have a better understanding of your role of leadership. It was his famous 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I buy that book. Anytime a new person comes on our board of directors, I give them that book. And so that is a book of principles that I believe are important to incorporate into our company. But anyway, I gave him the book, and he came back and he had read it. And now he too is a student of Maxwell. But he said to me about a year ago in his performance review, he broke down in tears, thanking me for helping him become a better man, a better husband, and a better help to the organization that we have. And he was truly very emotional about it. And I mean, that was very humbling for me, because all I did was try to be real and authentic with him and not and let him grow kind of at his own pace and develop at his own pace. But when you begin to realize that we are impacting people's lives for the good or the bad, because there are a lot of people out there that make people feel so small that they leave a job and it messes with their head for years. And so there's a tremendous amount of responsibility you have when you're leading a team, that when people leave the company or go someplace else, you want them to be much better than when they came to Texas State Optical. And I think that's a responsibility I have. And you don't do that by being a micromanager or a dictator, and in essence, implying that they're stupid and they need somebody to tell them all the time what to do or how to act and so forth. And it's a cancer in the company.
What a great conversation. John, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and leading from the heart. This has been a truly fantastic and inspirational conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's just me.
No, it's all good. You're terrific. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Awesome. What a great conversation. And I absolutely think this concept of a culture of personal development that we've talked about here today is something that is so powerful. I love that story at the end about the appreciation that one of the team members had for that culture and how it impacted their life. I think there's something here in this conversation that every leader can take that is going to be extremely helpful as they build their culture.
Yeah, can you just imagine for a moment, I applaud John for this whole personal growth plan is just imagine as the leader, the CEO, right? The one who's steering the corporate ship. If you knew what was driving your employees, imagine just stop for a moment, just think. If I knew what was driving each and every one of my employees, then it's up to me and my leadership team to help them achieve that. It's perfect. This is a wonderful conversation because these are the small little things that create these big ripples, Darrell.
100%. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're on a mission to find and feature the heart-centered CEOs of America. So if you know somebody that would be a great fit for this show, we'd love to hear from you. Just go to culturefromtheheart.com and nominate your CEO today. Well, once again, thanks for joining us. We believe that culture is the heartbeat of every organization. And as John has reminded us today, it's about creating a culture of personal development. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, lead with your heart and watch your culture thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover heart-centered leaders shaping extraordinary company cultures. To access a leader guide with notes from this week's episode, simply click the link in the show notes or visit us at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Do you know a CEO who's built a culture from the heart? We'd love to hear their story. Head over to www.culturefromtheheart.com and click the Nominate Your CEO button. Until next time, remember, great cultures start with the heart.